The Sawyer Hannay Show.
All right, buddy. Well, thanks for coming on, Jug. What's going on? What's all new?
Oh, just celebrating Thanksgiving.
Yeah, you didn't make her home.
Stupid. No, it's Thanksgiving, so I decided to spend less time with family.
Did you have anything good to eat at least?
No.
You're going to be proud of me what I did last night. So I went to GK's. I got not one put-in, 2 put-ins. And I ate them back to back.
Right.
While watching The Office. I'm not proud of it.
That's difficult.
I felt the need to get it off my chest.
I'm glad you did.
Yeah.
How about you? Do you have a meal today or anything that you're going to?
No family stuff today. No, pretty low key for me. The last couple weekends, man, it's been laying low, hanging out, doing a lot of fall prep, chores before the winter and all that. But I like it. I mean, I love the busyness of summer, as you know, but I love when things just kind of chill out and calm down too, right?
How was Morgan Wallen?
Morgan Wallen was awesome. It was, what a show. That guy's an entertainer. Every one of his songs is a hit, and everybody was into it. Everybody in the crowd was dressed up. I've been to Quebec lots. I've never seen people dressed that way. Everybody looked like they were right from the South. Just cowboy boots, tucked in button-up shirts, cowboy hats. It was a different vibe. But no, it was a really good, show.
You're going to have to watch Yellowstone.
Yeah.
Because I think it's kind of, I didn't think I'd like it, and I've started watching it, and it's quite good. Yeah. And I think you'd pick up on the vibe. I think you'd like it.
It's funny. I gave it a couple, maybe 2 full episodes, and I don't love it. And
me either. The first time through.
Okay. So is it like The Office? I got to give it a couple more episodes or what?
Yeah, I was like you. I watched the first season, and then I didn't watch it for probably 8 months.
Okay.
And I've watched 4 seasons in the last 3 weeks.
Okay. So yeah. So I got to give it more of a chance.
Yeah, I agree with you though. It's a weird show, and it's a whole bunch of unlikable characters, which I connected with. A
lot of heels.
It was a lot of heels. NWO. It's interesting. I think you'd like it, and obviously, the whole country liberty, that kind of mold. They do make it very redneck. Though it's you have to wear the cowboy hat everywhere. You take it off every once in a while.
It reminds me of the Calgary Stampede, that-esque, where it's someone in a suit but they're wearing a cowboy hat. You know what I mean? But when I was in the South, everybody talks about it. You have to watch Yellowstone, and some of our friends like Mike and that always talk about it. And I was like, okay, but they swear by it. I thought it was just okay, So but again, I'm only 2 or 3 episodes in, so I'll give it more of a chance. Yeah,
and you like to stick to your 2-3 shows.
I was watching The Office this morning for the 14th time. Dinner party.
Well, did you hear they might be rebooting it?
I don't like that. What do you think about that?
I hate it because Michael's not going to be in it.
So who's going to be in it? Is it going to be some of the same cast?
I don't know, because I don't think Krasinski will do it, because he's a freaking big star
he's too
now.
Big time.
He's just on Jack Ryan, and Steve Carell said it's a bad idea and you can't make the jokes, which he's right about, because he'll be canceled in a second. Yep. So I think it's a stupid idea. I think it'd even be a better idea just to have a forum or something, where they all got together and answered questions from fans or something stupid like that. Mm-hmm. That might even be a better idea.
Well, I think it was Jerry Seinfeld. You know this better than me, but I think it was Seinfeld. They offered him a bunch of money for another season, and he basically said, I don't want to ruin the show. If I come back for another season just to collect a big paycheck, it's going to kind of ruin the way the show was meant to end.
Yep.
And I think it's kind of the same with The Office. I feel like they almost watered it down anyway towards the end with Robert California, with Joan, and then bringing Michael back for the final epi, but he had no lines, and just I feel like it was already pretty watered down by the end. And now all of a sudden, if they want to reboot it, it's like, you're just going to squeeze the life right out of it.
Yeah. Jerry turned down $100 million for season 10 of Seinfeld, which is pretty incredible.
Yeah, there you go.
But I mean, you own your own business, you know, it's your product.
Yep.
Like sometimes money's money, but at the end of the day, quality, whatever it might be, quantity, if you're selling a hat, if you're selling a t-shirt, you're not going to sell a worse product and, you know, worry about what people might think at the end of the day. I think it's the same thing for The Office. Sure, you can put it on TV and it fills programming and people will be and it'll do crazy ratings. Don't get me wrong.
Well, we're both going to watch it. We just might not love it, you know?
Yeah, we'll critique it. And exactly. So it's kind of, everybody's doing it now and it's lazy because I don't think people want to write and create new things. So it's like, okay, let's go reboot this and let's reboot this. You know, it's just, it is what it is. Yeah, totally. And I, from the business perspective, like if you have it, like, you know, business law, if you have a chance to make more money, make more money. That's kind of the logic of business. But then you have the art side of it, the artistic side, where it's like, okay, let's not ruin something that's already fantastic, you know? So that's the conflict. But I think where the balance is, or maybe the balance should be, is like, and Seinfeld is on a different level than The Office. But when you're already filthy rich, what's another couple 10, 20 million, you know, and you're going to ruin your life's work. And from Jerry Seinfeld's credit, to his credit, I mean, who wouldn't want 100 million? Everybody and their dog would love that money, right? He's already rich. He's built something that he built a legacy with that show. His name will live on long after he does, you know? So I think he just said, you know, maybe I have enough money. The extra 100 mil isn't necessary to ruin my legacy or potentially jeopardize my legacy, you know? And with The Office, maybe they're not quite as, you know, filthy rich as Jerry Seinfeld, but, and a lot of them didn't go on to have fantastic careers either. So maybe some of them would be like, geez, I'd love another, you know, pay bump here for the next couple of years, you know? So I think that's kind of where it lies. I'm sure the producers and the people that don't care about the art whatsoever are pushing for it and saying, yeah, let's squeeze this to death and milk every bit of profit out of it. But your guys like Steve Carell, who went on, and Jim, who went on to have really good careers, they probably don't need the extra cash, you know? No, I don't think they do either. And yeah, it's just, I saw that and I go, oh, great. We get another show that's going to be a failure. Seinfeld was like the show of my youth, even though it came out in the late 80s when I shouldn't have been watching it that young, but thanks, Mom and Dad. When you think about your childhood, what's like the show of your childhood? I was thinking about that this week. Yeah, the show, like, I mean, I grew up watching a lot of The Simpsons. That was kind of I'm not going to say inappropriate, but that was like the edgy cartoon when I was growing up. And then Family Guy, I don't know when in my life Family Guy come in, but I love Family Guy right from the beginning. And I still love it. As a 31-year-old immature man, I still crack up at Family Guy. You know that, you know? And so, yeah, I mean, I would say those, like Simpsons was probably the one that sticks out the most. And that would be Seinfeld for you? Definitely Seinfeld. Yeah. I started watching Seinfeld when I was like 7 years old. And Mom and Dad didn't know at the beginning. And then I didn't understand all the jokes because there's a lot of nuances about like when I was 7 years old, like different, you know, sex acts and talking about masturbation and all this different stuff and what went over my head. But I was, you know, laughing at, you know, George being a liar. And I'm like, I get that. But no, it's you think about these shows and they really frame who you are as a person and what you go through, because you're like, wow, I remember this show when I was going through this, or this show when I was doing that. Like, it makes you really think back to good times and bad times, you know, during your life. Yeah, it's funny. You know, for anyone that doesn't have context, Noah Warren is his real name. I call him Jug. He's my cousin. So we grew up together, and we have the same sense of humor, same shows, same movies, things like that. And it's funny, just as we're chatting, like my intention of this chat was more sort of talk sports and whatever, right? But here we are chatting shows like we do. And then I'm just like running through my head is a bunch of questions about movies and things and that we could really get into. Before we jump over to sports, because I do really want to cover that, because I want to cover the Leafs. I'm excited to talk about them.
The same question you just kind of shot at me, you know, a childhood show. Let's talk just for me, 5-10 minutes movies. You know, what movies pop in your head when you think like childhood movies or just legendary movies that have like stamped a date and time in your life?
So think back, I was not even 10 years old yet, and I got into the movie theater with our mutual friend, Riley Kale.
Who's a menace to society, by the way.
The menace, yeah. It was a rated R movie, but somehow, and he might have been 14. So I was almost going to be 10. And we got into Step Brothers. And it was like a Tuesday afternoon, and there was like 2 other people in the theater. And I've never laughed harder at a movie. And I said, this is so inappropriate.
Oh, yeah.
This is so, but my 10, I laugh as hard now at 25 as I did 15 years ago when I was 10. Yeah. And that one, 100%, because I think it still holds up. And that's another movie I'm glad that was not made into a sequel.
Well, yeah, that's what I was going to say when you brought that up. It's like, somebody could have made some money off a second Step Brothers. Everybody would have got paid. Everybody would have watched, you know, but they didn't do it, which is, I think, is fantastic. And now they're like, especially Will Ferrell, he's aged too much. It wouldn't make sense to do it now, you know, for a sequel. But yeah, to your point, I'm so happy they didn't make that a sequel. And it's funny, like you're, you know, a few years younger than me, but that's definitely a movie too, I would have said, like really stamped. Like that's just an iconic. You know, you get your super bads, you get your Wedding Crashers, you get your Dodgeballs, you get your Old Schools, and then you get your, you know, your Step Brothers. It's timeless. It's classic.
It's so weird to see like the Vince Vaughns, the Will Ferrells, the Owen Wilsons. They're all in their like late 50s now, and it's crazy to me because I'm like, it just seemed yesterday they were quote unquote in their prime, like probably a decade older than you, but making all these great movies, and now they're pushing 60 and they can't even fit those roles anymore. It's kind of, and
it seems
pushed out.
It seems recent to us, Jug, because we watch those movies every year. So like we still see Vince Vaughn in Old School when he was like 30, like late 30s, you know, but he's not late 30s anymore. But to us, because we watch Old School every 6 months for the last 10 years, you know, he seems like he's still that age, right? And old School was like low key, like that was the first ever Will Ferrell show movie I think I've ever seen. That was a banger, you know, Vince Vaughn and just the whole concept of them living on campus as older men. Like, you know, the dean comes in. Of course, they used to bully the dean back in like high school, and now he's like Dean Pritchard. Right. He's like this like well put together dean, but he's still like resentful towards his old like high school bullies, and they're still drunk on the couch living in campus, like, you know.
Yeah, well, because Will Ferrell was still doing Saturday Night Live at the time that he did that movie, and it was a hit. And they didn't expect anything. The budget for that movie was so low. Like their biggest expense was getting Snoop Dogg to be in it for 5 seconds.
Snoop-a-loop, bring your green hat.
We're all like, yeah, bring your green.
We're going streaking.
They did that. Yeah, and they did that. And Vince Vaughn then did Wedding Crashers right after. And then Anchorman was right after that for Will Ferrell. And that's another one for me for a comedy genre is Anchorman. The humor, I then went in to study journalism. I always thought like Ron Burgundy is such an idiot. But you see so many people on the news that you're like, okay, that's a Ron Burgundy. They're just literally reading a prompter and he can literally say anything and he'll say it. And that's, you know, that movie was so accurate on so many different levels on how news and how media is done, even to the.
And they did it in such a funny way, right? Like even in, I think it was more the second one where they're like, cut to the police chase. Like, no, we got to give real news. And they're like, no, like this is entertaining. Like America loves this. And it's just like a violent police chase that really has no value, but everyone's locked in and entertained, right?
In the movie, they're like, he's got a gun. And they don't know. He goes, oh, we think he's got a concealed weapon. And
ratings through the roof. If that isn't fucking media 101, I don't know what is. You know?
Yeah, that is 100%.
Yeah. It's too funny.
If I had to think of a non-comedic movie, I loved Lord of the Rings and things like that. But
yeah, I couldn't get into Lord of the Rings.
know,
I played the video games, but I couldn't get into Lord of the Rings.
For me, I would go like I love Tarantino, and he's one of my favorites. But if I had to go DiCaprio, I'd probably go Wolf of Wall Street.
Yeah,
I thought that movie
I watched that recently.
really too long, but very well done. He's phenomenal in everything he does. And Jonah Hill, who's another phenomenal actor, I think that's his best acting performance in any movie.
Yeah, it was good. He was great in that. You know what's funny about that is obviously Jordan Belfort did his time in jail, came out. He wrote a few books. He does speaking. I think he does sales coaching.
He's got a
podcast, The Wolf Den or whatever, and he's still a star. Like he was a star. I mean, that movie really put him on the map. But what I find interesting is the Duchess. She is now trying to kind of promote herself based on that movie character. So I stumbled across her on TikTok. You know how the For You page works, right? The algorithm. And I'm interested in Wolf of Wall Street, Jordan Belfort, all those things. For better or for worse, I'm interested. I'm not going to say I love the guy, but I'm interested in the story and his skill set and things, right? So then she starts popping up on my For You page, the Duchess, and she introduces herself. And she's this older, beautiful, blonde woman with an accent, just like Margot Robbie had in the movie. And she comes on and starts telling things from her point of view. And I guess the movie wasn't completely accurate. Like, she wasn't pleased with how she was portrayed in all aspects of the movie. You know, of course, nobody probably would be if there's a movie made about you. But yeah, she's out there. So she's trying to chime in and tip in and try to, you know, milk some of the value off. Because, I mean, it was her story too, right? And a really dramatic life and story, and raising kids and stuff through that, like, would have been really crazy.
And I think I find they do this to a lot of women in movies that are made about particularly men. They make the wife look kind of stupid and kind of like you don't know what's going on. And I'm sure that's her complaint, is that she was just like this bystander that just, you know, accepted everything, and he's doing drugs and cheating on her, and it was fine. But yeah, that movie, Margot Robbie's career went like this. DiCaprio, totally. I think he was even big, but I think it even got bigger because the fact that he can do one movie every year, and that's just okay. That's his life. Like, he only has to do one a year for the rest of his life, and he'll be completely fine. Date, you know, women my age.
And as soon as they get 26, they get the boot.
Yeah. And then they date Pete Davidson.
Next. They date the next guy in line. Oh, no, it's crazy. It's Leo lives some life. I seen, you know, obviously I watched the Titanic. I seen, you know, a lot of his movies. I seen Great Gatsby, which is a story I really love, but I didn't love their reenactment of it. But Wolf of Wall Street, you're right, man. That was I think that might have been his best performance, my opinion. Maybe it's because I just love the movie too, but I think that was one of his best for sure.
And it's funny because now movies are, there's like big movies, and then there's like, it seems like every other movie is a documentary or a documentary that becomes a movie based on people. And those are fine. I like the way they did that movie better than I even look at like The Last Dance, something for us I know we both loved. Thank God for that during the pandemic, because you couldn't do anything and you had that every week. But
the MJ series. Yeah, that was unreal. That was so good.
I think they looked at that, and then they made this movie Air about Michael Jordan and how they got the shoe deal done. Okay. And they kind of did it like the Wolf of Wall Street, which I enjoyed more because it's a truer story, I think, you know, running the right way. I
read Shoe Dog because there's a lot of similarities, you know, between sourcing sneakers and what I do, sourcing clothing. And it was so interesting that what MJ did to the Nike brand. I don't think people realize the significance that Michael Jordan has had on the Nike brand. Everyone sees the Nike brand as larger than life, and it is. That's where it is now, you know? But it wasn't always that way. And they were getting, let's say, not the A+ athletes, let's say the Bs and maybe some A-type athletes signed on as ambassadors or whatever the terminology was back then. And all of a sudden they got MJ, which MJ, as we remember, wasn't supposed to be the crazy superstar that he is. They knew he'd be good, and I believe he was a first rounder, right? But he wasn't the first overall, like, Bedard of basketball at the time. He wasn't the Sidney Crosby, the McKinnon, those guys that you just know are going to be stars of basketball. And then he just took off, and Nike just happened to be working with him at the time. And had he been that first overall selection, highly touted guy, Nike probably wouldn't have been able to afford him. You know?
No, what they did is the guy, Sonny was his name, who ultimately got the deal done. He said, we can't get anybody else. We're not getting a top 15 player. Our business is going to be filing Chapter 11 in a couple years anyway. So why not take this swing? And he might be a star. And then he took his mother, said, we'll do the deal with you. But we're getting a percentage of everyone. And they sold $100 million in shoes in the first year. I mean, he makes over $100 million still
off
a
that
year
deal
to this day.
Well, what I like about that deal was it was creative. It disrupted the way that relationships were between brands and athletes, because back in the day, And One or Converse or any of those basketball leaders back then. Well, maybe not And One was then, but Converse at the time I think was really big, right?
Converse was huge.
So
they were the
Converse would sign an athlete, and that would be it. Wear our sneaker. But the approach with MJ was, let's create a sneaker together, and that got MJ really excited. And I mean, they could have done that with 100 athletes and it not work out, but they did it with MJ, so of course it blew up, right? But I just think that was so inventive at the time, because they were a small sneaker outfit breaking into a big market with Converse leading the way. Like, they didn't have the budgets to compete with Converse, so they had to get more creative, and they had to entice a guy like MJ. And how they did that was they said, listen, we're going to make this sneaker for you. We're going to be hands-on with you. We're not just going to throw you a box of sneakers, say, wear these, here's your check, move on. They wanted a very personable collaboration together. And I think that's why it's still so fruitful to this day. And I think that's why Nike is the brand that it is. They made a handful of deals like that, Tiger Woods in his heyday, LeBron and all that, but MJ was like the first one, to really just crush it for them, which was so interesting to read about in the book and then watch, like you said, the Last Dance. So good.
And he retired in 98, thinking about this, like the year I was born. And his shoe still outsells LeBron. It still outsells Kyrie's, Kanye's. Like it doesn't matter. Like he's got it's crazy, the longevity, and seeing people like in our age demographic, like say 25 to 32 or something in that demographic, everybody's wearing Dunks. Everybody's wearing Jordans. Like I go around Fredericton now. That's all I see.
Super mainstream.
Yeah, super mainstream.
And the whole nostalgia, like the vintage is back type vibe right now in the trends, that helps the Jordan brand too, because the Jordan brand is the vintage OG brand of, it was the coolest damn thing. You couldn't get your hands on it back when he played. And now that nostalgia, plus it's still a great sneaker. Like they haven't cut like on quality. They haven't compromised those things either. But then they get the nostalgia part, and it's not just athletes or basketball players wearing it. It's just the girl going to the grocery store that's wearing, Jordans. It's pretty cool.
It is pretty cool. Like that's half the reason I bought this hat. I saw it online, and I'm like, oh yeah. And I remember watching that as a kid, watching wrestling. I'm like, oh yeah, I loved Hollywood Hulk Hogan. I'm like, I gotta buy the hat.
Well, we had a big. I was with the Agnews. They had their Grease Dog barbecue right this weekend. So I was with them, and we were talking about wrestling. And we all come from, like, I'm 31. Drew would be, I don't know, mid to late 30s. Cleve is just a little bit older than me. Jesse is probably pushing 40. So we had a few different generations, and we were talking about like wrestlers, like who was the guy of each of our generations, right? And it was funny because Jesse was like, oh, Stone Cold and Mick Foley and those guys, right? I didn't grow up watching them. John Cena or like Batista or Chris Jericho, Triple H, like Randy Orton, Undertaker, Kane. They were kind of the legends of my era, which I think would be similar to yours, right? Is there anybody I'm missing that would have been in between there for wrestlers?
Pretty much the same as what you're going through, other than like towards the tail end of me watching me starting to wrestle again, there's this guy named CM Punk.
I remember him,
and I loved him because he was like, the truth teller, like pipe bomb. He told Vince to like go F off every time.
Well, he had the Pepsi
week.
tattoo, right, on his arm.
Yeah.
I remember that. And he had a cup of coffee in the UFC, right?
Couple of fights in the UFC. Yeah, he was a big deal there for a while, and Dana really liked him. So he wanted, like, he broke through, and I would even think towards like Jesse's. Like, I agree with you. Jesse's probably like 40. Brock Lesnar would have been big because he had a match with Steve Austin at WrestleMania one year, and it was one of the biggest matches ever. Like, Brock beat Stone Cold at age 22 and became the world champion. And it's just when he just got out of wrestling, and he was the man in
I remember
wrestling,
Lesnar
and he was just
as a wrestler.
This freak.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, he was a specimen, and he was a true wrestler, like an Olympic wrestler, right? Him and Kurt Angle come up together and wrestled together on like the national stage and stuff, which is so cool. And I know that Angle, he broke his neck like 4 or 5 times. Like he's just those guys. Like, everyone says it's fake. It's fake. Okay, sure, but it's still a gigantic athletic human being going from point A to point B. Like, they're still doing a double backflip and fucking landing on the other guy. Like, I know they do it as safely as possible, but it's still not perfectly safe. Those guys get really seriously injured and hurt, you know?
Yeah, I remember one of my favorite matches when I was a kid. It was a tables, ladders, and chairs, the Dudley Boys, Edge and Christian, Hardys. And Jeff was on top of a ladder, and it fell, and he was holding on to the titles. And Edge was on a ladder, and he speared him in midair.
Yeah, crazy.
With the titles in hand. And I'm like, okay, that might be fake, but that's still damn hurt, both of them.
Yeah, exactly. You know.
And you think, like you said, Kurt Angle, he just released a documentary too. It's really good. And I know he was on Joe Rogan a couple weeks ago, and he got really bad into pain medications. Like, he was an addict. He was an addict for a long time, and he had to like wean himself off. He's been through a lot in his professional life.
Totally. Yeah. No, I can totally see that. I think this is a great segue. We go one of two directions with this, because I wanted to talk to you about the UFC, and I also kind of wanted to get your take, which is a bit of a UFC hybrid conversation, on Nate Diaz and Jake Paul and all that shit. So obviously we know Logan Paul's in WWE, whatever. He's great for views. He's great for social media clout. He's good for relevance, all that other stuff. But then to segue, his brother Jake, who is very similar in a lot of those manners in terms of the value they bring to the table, but fighting a guy like Nate Diaz and ultimately losing. Like, what do you did you watch that fight?
Yes, I did.
So what are your thoughts on that? Like, I talked to Cleve about it too, and I was like, man, like, what the fuck's going on? Like, Jake Paul trains hard. He's in good shape. He's probably juicing, but he's an athlete. He's there. He's putting in the work, you know. But he wasn't put on this earth to be a boxer, you know. But here he is fighting all these real legitimate fighters and winning and beating most of them. You know, like, what are your like? Do you think that these guys are throwing the fights? Do you think that they're showing up and just saying, whatever, I don't need to prepare as if this is a real fight. I'm just going to have fun and cash the check at the end of the night. Like, what do you think the attitude and the approach is with this? Or do you think it's in their contract they need to take a fall? Like, what do you think?
No, I think he's smart in picking every opponent other than Tommy Fury. Because Tommy Fury is a boxer by trade. Every other person he's gone up against has not been a boxer by trade, meaning he would have more practice than his opponent in boxing. He's been boxing for the last 5 years. Nate Diaz, okay, he's a UFC fighter. There is a boxing component to MMA, but you have to be prepared for jiu-jitsu, for wrestling, for everything, right? So he fights Askren. If there's one fight that I thought was scripted, it was the Askren one. But he fought Tyron Woodley twice. He knocked out Woodley clean. Like, he knocked his head off. And then the Nate fight, he was just better at boxing than Nate. Nate was more focused on being Nate, putting him in a chokehold, bopping around, looking at people. And I think he's a legit boxer. But if he got in there with, like, he fought Tommy Fury, if he gets in there with Canelo Alvarez, who he wants to fight, he would get killed.
Like,
he'd get destroyed.
Someone that has boxed his entire life and career. Right.
Yes. Yeah, that's their profession. Right. I think he needs to continue to fight these MMA
celebrity
guys.
matches, basically.
Or one of the biggest fights, and this is honestly sad to say for me who loves combat, one of the biggest fights that could be made in the world right now is Jake Paul and KSI.
Right.
And KSI is fighting Tommy Fury this weekend, and Dennis and Logan are the co-main event. And I don't know why KSI is doing that fight. He says he wants to beat the guy that
Jake or whatever.
Jake,
right.
He's gonna lose. He's gonna get destroyed.
Tommy will beat KSI.
Yeah, easily.
Okay.
Tommy's so big in there. He's a big dude.
And he comes from a boxing family. It's in his blood. His brother's an unbelievable boxer. His dad's a psychopath. Like, it's in their blood, right?
So I think KSI Jake Paul would be huge, and I just think Jake's a good boxer for his competition, but if he gets in there against anybody legit, he'll be humbled quick.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like, in my opinion, it's like a side quest. Like boxing, it just doesn't have the sexiness it always had, you know? And it's kind of a revival, a recreation of boxing and just getting people interested in boxing again, you know, as a bit of a side thing compared to what that sport used to be. But then you have, on the other hand, you have UFC, which is as real as it gets, man. Like, people are getting knocked the fuck out. Like, people are, you know, and that's some real shit. Like, that's some gladiator stuff, man. And the figures you have in there now, like, just talk about marketability. We're talking about the Paul brothers, which they're great at marketing. Love them or hate them. You have to respect what they do. But you look at, like, Sugar, O'Malley. You look at Strickland. You look at these personalities that are in there now, man. Like, McGregor kind of kicked things off by being this loud, outspoken personality, face of UFC. But now people learned from that. The O'Malley's, you know, dyeing his hair, starting out, like, making himself known and just making himself stand out. And then Strickland, as we know, has his own way of standing out. But, like, these personalities coming into the UFC, like, what can you make of it? O'Malley, you know, wearing a belt and Strickland wearing a belt right now. Like, what do you think's going on right now with the UFC?
I love it. I think it's phenomenal that two people that in our society today would be looked at as unlikable.
Yeah, totally. Polarizing.
Are champions. Yeah, polarizing. And the funny thing, you look at Strickland, he's becoming more and more popular as the days go on. I mean, people in Australia were rooting for him over Adesanya. And Adesanya's from New Zealand. So I think the UFC is in this position where, because Dana White's the boss, nobody can be quote unquote canceled. Nobody can be told to shut up because he's done enough stuff that they don't care. They're just, okay, well, I'm going to let them do this. And if they say a homophobic slur, or if they say something, or if he punches a fan.
Punches a fan.
I don't know. Yeah, Strickland does it all the time. So, you know, it happens. But they're entertaining. They sell. You know, like Sugar's he's got the tats, he's got the flair, he's got the arrogance. He talks about, you know, sleeping around with women when he's married, and it's okay. I think it's great for the promotion, and the UFC, I think, is a better product than boxing, and boxing is still popular, but a UFC undercard is more entertaining than a main event boxing pay-per-view, and that's my opinion on it. I just think it's a more entertaining thing to watch.
I agree with that too, because it's higher intensity. Even if it's a prelim, like I went to the local UFC here in Moncton, which there was no big stars headlining that, but I seen all the prelims, and every 5-10 minutes you're seeing someone get knocked the fuck out. It's crazy. It's so, like, probably toxic, but it's like so exhilarating. Like, you're watching these two, it's modern day gladiators fighting in the ring, pound for pound, and usually I find with the prelims and the earlier fights, there's more of a skill discrepancy where one guy's better than the other, where at the top it's usually pretty even. So you'll see guys just dominate, right, and knock somebody out. So I couldn't agree more. It's a lot more entertaining than watching 8 to 10 rounds of just a slow pace, everyone, you know, strategic. It's like a chess match in combat sports versus UFC's more high impact, just go, and who's ever still standing wins, you know?
And even like say you watch a UFC fight and it's a decision. You can have a decision 3-round fight, and it's the best 15 minutes you'll ever see. Because Suga fought this guy named Peter Yan in Abu Dhabi last year, and it was a 15-minute war. Like, I didn't know who won. It was that close. But you're like, oh, I didn't see a finish there, but I was just as entertained. You can go watch a boxing 12 rounds, 3 minutes around. You're like, okay, well, I did that tonight. Yeah. I can check the day off, and I can move on to my Sunday mornings. At least I did something tonight, and just, sit home and watch The Office. Yeah. Or whatever. Eat two poutines. But so I did, and boxing's so expensive too. Like, I ordered a pay-per-view a couple weeks ago, and it was $85 for 4 fights.
What's a UFC? What's the comparison?
So every UFC pay-per-view is $65.
Okay.
And you get 5 fights.
What do you think is slap? Like, Dana White's behind that, right? This new slap sport?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah,
you hate it? Yeah. What's the? All I ever see is like the viral clips on TikTok, and again, that's people just getting hammered. Like, there's got to be some like health repercussions here in another couple years that are going to come out about this sport.
Oh yeah, and they make no money.
They don't make.
They make like $10,000.
Oh yeah, that's what they get. So what is it? Like a macho alpha thing? Like, oh, I slapped the shit out of you. Like, what's the motivation?
Like a bunch of truck drivers. It's like a bunch of truck drivers that are like, let's go slap
just
this
big rugged guys. I want to prove their dominance.
Yeah, huge dudes, different, and there's weight classes too, which is insane. But yeah, you literally just stand there and get slapped, and if you survive it, then you can slap the other guy.
So what an advantage if you get the first slap. Massive advantage.
Yeah,
massive. Because you might not even get hit. If you hit him good enough with the first one, you might not even get hit. For anyone that hasn't seen the sport that might be listening to this, you basically stand, and correct me where I'm wrong, Jug, because you know sports more than I do, but you basically stand in a box. Like, your feet are essentially planted in a box. If you step out of the box, you lose, right? And you stand there with your hands behind your back, and you just have to take a slap, like a haymaker slap. And if you stumble outside of your like little area, you lose, or if you fall, or if you're knocked out, or it's over. But if you can stand there, take it without going outside of your limits, your boundaries, then you get a chance to just whack the next guy. And it goes back and forth until someone fails out, basically, right? Until someone's knocked out or submits or...
Yeah, have you ever seen like videos of those stupid arm wrestling competitions? Another thing that's not a sport, in my opinion. It's the same exact thing. There's like a judge that lines your arm up, so you're like distance away, and then you just hammer him right in the cheek, and 9 times out of 10, the guy just drops like a sack of potatoes, and then the guy screams, and he gets his winning check for 10 minutes.
Have you seen the slow-mos? The slow-mos? And their face, their face is... It doesn't even look like a human with the slow-mo when the slap hits them across the face.
It was like when Tony Ferguson got knocked out by Michael Chandler with that up kick. Anybody listening, go watch that video. It's quite disturbing. I'll let you know. But yeah, you're right. Like, the face looks like...
It looks like an alien face. Like, it's just like crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks really messed up. But yes, it's... They made a video game, a slot video game is coming out.
Wow. Yeah. Unreal.
What the hell? It can't be that fun. I don't think we can do like we did back in the day and sim a season of slap.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't know. Your career span's like what, 6 months? Then you're done. If you're lucky, you'll make like $30K in your career earnings, and then you just fucking apply for government assistance after that.
Could be slap fighting league, and you go slap, and then you have to go, and then it's like Grand Theft Auto the rest of the game. You go drive truck and steal shit.
Yeah, you gotta find money elsewhere because you ain't gonna do it in the slap world. Oh man.
Yeah, and so your next...
That's nuts. Oh, I know you'll like this, so I wanted to bug you about this. Football has been more popular than ever. And it's gotta be because, Juggie, it's gotta be because of your girl, Taylor Swift. She's putting football on the map.
He's putting football on the map, yeah. What's popular sport in the world?
Man, America reserves a day a week for football, and it's because of Taylor Swift and her showing up at those games.
She was at the game yesterday. She wasn't a good enough girlfriend to go watch Travis in Minnesota. I don't blame her. We can go to that.
Maybe they're on the rocks. It's a matter of time. It's a matter of time before she writes a song about him, about how he broke her heart, and all that. But in the meantime, they're gonna
will never be her
they're
fault.
gonna sell a lot of
We know
jerseys in the
that.
meantime.
Yeah, we know it won't be her
No.
fault, and she did nothing wrong.
It'll be his
so
fault.
I can't wait. I can't wait to listen to the song.
Oh,
But
I know.
he's got like 1.2 million new Instagram followers in the last week and a half, something like that.
Oh, it's
crazy.
she again, just like the Pauls, like her or hate her, Taylor Swift has some star power. She's a superstar.
Mhm.
People love her. People follow her. It's interesting. It's annoying to watch because I don't care about people's dating lives, but it's been interesting to watch from like a societal standpoint of like all these Swifties, these like girl super fans are now like tuning into football because her hunky boyfriend plays football, you know? And then you have all these football fans that are just like, what the hell is going on? Like, why after every single play are we looking at Taylor Swift in the press box? Like, why? You know what I mean? Like, they're just like, stick to the game. Like, this is our game. We love watching the football aspect. Why do we care about Taylor Swift? But then you have all these newfound fans that just love Taylor Swift and whoever she dates and whatever she's up to that are now tuning into the football game. So it's a weird kind of co-branding experience here. And plus Kelsey has his own podcast and all that stuff too. He was on his own dating show, which is kind of odd, but whatever, I guess, to each their own. So he's kind of a superstar off the field in his own way too. Like, it's just like a weird thing. Like, I feel like this should be studied in like a year or two from now, just the runoff of what happens here, you know? Because I think it's
I want
crazy.
to ask you, because you know trends and social media and that stuff, and I know none of it. So why do you think Taylor Swift is so popular?
Oh man, it's kind of hard. I don't know. And she's been at it since she was like 15. She'd be like 33, 34, right? So she's been in the game a long time and relevant the whole time. She's hard. I don't know. I honestly don't know how to explain that one. I think when she started, it was easy. Here's this cute little Southern girl with an accent, writes her own song. She's writing about boys that broke her heart. She's like 15, 16, whatever. She's like America's sweetheart, which is, you know, I think reason to love her. And then she kind of grows up, does the country thing. She kind of jumps genres. So now she becomes like an international kind of pop star. I think she does a really good job remaining connected to her fans. Like, she's very, she like shows up at like a fan's wedding or something, like just something like that would seem ridiculous for someone of her status, but like her fans eat it up, right? Oh my God, Taylor's so thoughtful. She showed up at whose ever wedding, and she's thoughtful with her fans. She's smart. I think she's very smart and calculated. I think she's got good people around her, and she makes good music. She sounds good. She knows how to entertain. She definitely knows how to like kind of milk the drama. Like, there's always drama in her songs. There's always like it's always there's always conversation to be had after her songs. Like, oh, who'd she write that song about? Who was that one about? I think it was about him. I think it was about this. I think it was about that. You know, so I just think that she stays relevant very well. She makes great music. There was a bunch of drama around Scooter Braun owning her masters, like her owning her music basically, and she didn't like that, so she re-recorded everything, which just was like more drama. It made her fans more loyal to her, and she also reproduced her music again, which was all like really good hits, you know, so it kind of revived those older songs. And I don't know, man. I think it's a combination of things. But she's huge. And it's similar to Morgan Wallen. Like, you asked me about his show earlier. Like, all of his songs were hits. He's hard to explain, but he sells out everywhere he goes. You know, he's just one of those stars, man. He played in Toronto like 2 or 3 nights in a row. He played at Fenway 2 nights in a row. Like, they're all sellouts. He just went to Vancouver. He did the Canada tour. He sold out every spot of the way. And in some cases, people like fighting over tickets, and it's just when they're larger than life, some of those stars, and I think Taylor Swift just falls into that category, you know.
Yeah, no, it's impressive because she's releasing a movie, and people are, and it's not really a movie, it's just the Eras tour,
right? Like,
it's whatever footage they have from it, and people are going nuts for it, like get early tickets, and I'm like, it's not a movie. I want to go see Kings of the Flower Moon, Scorsese, my boy De Niro.
But if you were a super fan, like drinking the Kool-Aid, cult following, you'd be so excited. It's no different than Justin Bieber when he come out with fuck was that movie called? Never Say Never or whatever. You know, when he was like at the top of his game, like it was just people are drinking the Kool-Aid, man. They love it. They love him. They want to hear every detail about him, just like Taylor Swift. The Swifties, they love her. You know, they just love her. So, but
now they love Travis Kelce until
that's right until they hate him, and you know, unless they get married and live happily ever after. I'd be half worried if I was him because she's got a lot of influence and whatever she says goes, you know. So if she wants to say something bad about him, I mean, people are going to believe it, right? Which is scary, but I don't know. I guess we'll see.
I was concerned yesterday. It looked like he tore his Achilles during the game, and he got up and he was okay.
Yikes.
And I guess people were like, really like, oh my God, is he going to be okay? And it was a bunch of like young women. And then there was another crowd because he's doing Pfizer ads, and people, Aaron Rodgers called him Mr. Pfizer on a show last week. So now he's in that camp and he's with Taylor Swift. His life's got to be like good, but also hell,
it's got to be chaotic, you know. And I think he's a professional. He's a superstar, and he's a really talented guy on and off the field. So he's probably handling it much better than just the common person would. But he's got a lot of chaos around him, a lot of pressure, a lot of eyeballs on him, you know. But yeah, I mean, I think he just solidified his post-career success. You know, when he's done playing football, he'll be relevant for a long time, you know. So, I mean, all those things are kind of, I guess, I mean, good for him. Hopefully, like you said, it all kind of works out and it doesn't get ugly because, you know, that can happen too. But enough about that.
Right.
But enough about the relationship thing. I just want to kind of poke some fun at you because I know you're a huge football fan, and I know that these outside type of influences and drama and things is just not your cup of tea. So I wanted to tease you about that.
Yeah,
but
appreciate that.
Yeah, no, I had to get some fun in there. But what I really wanted to talk to you about all day was my Leafs. My Leafs, Juggie. And I know that you're unbiased, and I know you know every fucking team and sport, or every player, every athlete, every coach, everything going wide open. And I don't know a fraction of what you know, but I know a little bit about the Leafs. And I'm excited this year.
Okay.
I'm excited this year. Mm-hmm. And before you crush my dreams, let me tell you why. Bertuzzi.
Okay.
Bertuzzi. Missing tooth. Long hair. Greasy tattoos. Tongue flop. No knob on his stick. Gritty. Will fight. Doesn't give a shit. Grinds. Also has a scoring touch. Love him. Last year in the trade deadline, I say we as if I'm part of the fucking team. But we got Ryan O'Reilly, which I like O'Reilly. Love him. Great. He was probably my second choice for available players last year at the deadline. But my first choice would have been Bertuzzi. He's a left winger. He can play with that top line. He doesn't compete for the center space like they have JT and Matthews at center. I would have preferred Bertuzzi last year, but I'm really happy we got him this year. Domi, I just feel okay. I think the storyline is nice because Ty Domi, had such a great career in Toronto. I think the storyline is nice. Mm-hmm. I'm not completely sold on Domi, but I'm drinking the Bertuzzi Kool-Aid. Love him. I think he's fantastic. I'd ride or die with him. I think he's the guy. I think he's a Hyman, but on steroids and also cool. And and then obviously you got your big guys, your Matthews, your Marner. They should be good. They're going to be good this year, regular season at least. Playoffs, of course, is a different story. Billy had a good year last year. William Nylander, stud, worth every penny he's asking, in my opinion. And then you got JT, who's aging quickly by the minute, slowing down by the minute. I love McCabe. I wish we could have signed Shen because I like the way he played last year. I like McCabe. O'Reilly's O'Reilly, right? Or Riley, I mean, not O'Reilly. The net could probably be a little better, but here we are. What do you think? What do you think of the Leafs? Break them down for me. Break my heart.
Okay, so I'm not a wet blanket. I think they're the second best team in the Eastern Conference. I think Carolina's the best team in the East. I think you could argue Carolina's the best team in the league, but I think Toronto has an advantage on a couple of fronts. They've gotten better, and a lot of the teams around them have gotten worse. Boston, Bergeron, Krejci, Their number one center is Charlie Coyle. The biggest thing he's done in his career is check you really hard. That's about all he's accomplished.
When Charlie Coyle hit me, I know you know this story, but when I was playing junior and he just got back from whatever college he committed to, and he come back for St. John for a run, and he dumped and chased on me, routine play. I went in for the puck. I could see him coming. No problem. I was just going to take the hit. I made the play. That's fine. And that man hit me clean as a whistle. But he hit me, and my bones are still sore. And when he hit me, I said, that guy's going to make the NHL. And then, of course, he went on to fucking tear it up point-wise and all that. But just that first shift dump and chase, he hit me so hard, I said, well, he's a National Leaguer. That's it.
He's a good player. I worry about him being a number one center. So Boston is not as good as they were. Tampa they get worse every year because the more success you have, the more they penalize you in the NHL. So they lose pieces. Could be Stamkos' last season with the team. Vasilevsky's out the first 2 months with the back surgery. That's problematic. Florida, again, I like their team. They got our guy, Matthew Tkachuk, stud of studs. Might be higher on my top 10 than Matthews, but we won't get into that today. But no Ekblad for the first couple of months. They're going to be without Montour for at least a month. So they're depleted. But I like what you said. I like the Bertuzzi ad on Toronto. I think Matthews had a disappointing year last year. To me, him scoring 40 goals, that's a benchmark. It has to be, you have to go above that. He's a 50-goal scorer every year. If you're Alex Ovechkin, if you want to be put in that conversation, that's where it has to be. It's not, that's just obvious. Like you said, Bill Nye, the science guy, looking for a contract, motivated. Mitch Marner hasn't gotten to 100 points yet. I'm sure he'd like to do that. There's other wingers like Tkachuk, like Pasternak, like Mikko Rantanen, who have all accomplished that feat, and he hasn't. But Pittsburgh, they get better, but they're older. Ottawa, Buffalo, I like both those teams, but they're kind of on the come-up. Islanders, who are who they are. New Jersey, I like a lot, my Devils. But I think Toronto's the second-best team in the East. I think they very well could win the President's Trophy if everything goes well this year. And they should be a threat to win the Stanley Cup because they have the assets and they have the team to do it now. And if they're ever going to do it, it'll be now.
So, team to do it, where do you feel their holes are? Defense is always what we talk about when it comes to the Leafs. They got the high-scoring offense. They rip it up in the regular season. Marner, Matthews, rip it up. And then the playoffs, they don't. In the last few years, I've sat and watched it with your parents. I've talked to you about it, watched some games with you.
Yep.
We need grit. Okay, let's go out and get Foligno. Let's go out and get Clifford. Okay, we need defense. Okay, let's pad it with Shen. Let's pad it with McCabe. Let's, try to fill these voids. They had Anderson, who is a star goalie. They got rid of him because he wasn't a playoff guy, injuries, all those things. So what do you think the holes are? What are the vulnerabilities for the Toronto Maple Leafs? Not in the regular season, because we know they can do well. And I agree, they could win the President's Trophy. But that means fuck all when it comes to playoffs, right? So what are the vulnerabilities of the Toronto Maple Leafs going into round one of the playoffs?
Their defense, and it's too small, it's too weak, and it's just not a playoff defense. You look at the Vegas Golden Knights, Pietrangelo, Whitecloud, Theodore, Martinez. They had all the defensemen are basically your height or taller, and they're all built the same way, and they're so hard to get up against. Or if you do get by them, Alex Pietrangelo will try to knock your arm off like you get the dry cycle. And because who gives a shit? And they had that D. You look back, the Washington defense was really big. Pittsburgh, I think without Letang, an advantage in the playoffs. He turns the puck over like nobody else. There's a reason Erik Karlsson's never won because he's not a playoff defenseman. And I just look at the Maple Leafs, maybe even in your lifetime, I think definitely mine. I've said this before and people get mad. The Toronto Maple Leafs have not had a defenseman in 25 to 30 years. Thomas Caberlet, spare me on that. Go back to the Czech, go coach your
Brian
son.
McCabe was a stud for them, but defined stud. I agree with you. He was not like
Brian McCabe.
Victor
not
Hedman,
Brian McCabe.
that's for sure.
No, I can't see that. But they have a defense that will be very good in the regular season. They'll move the puck. They have this skill, but it's not enough to win in the playoffs. I think they need to get bigger. They need to do certain things. So I like their team, certainly. I think the trade deadline will be the time for them to find just a bigger defense. I think one thing that Toronto's done in the Dubas regime, which is obviously different now, is they built a team of skill and not so much girth, not finesse. And I think defense is, you need to have a bit of everything. You need to have a skilled guy. Like Shea Theodore is tough, but he can also score. Right. The kid's a stud. And I think Morgan Riley is a good player. I think he's a better player than people think because he plays in Toronto. But if he's your best player, he's got to play 27, 26 minutes a night, which the best players do. I think you're in trouble because Carolina might have the best defense in the league with Brent Burns, Jacob Slavin, the human eraser, Brett Pesce. They just re-added Tony DeAngelo from Philadelphia. They got 8 defensemen. They had to cut a couple that could be NHL guys right now. And they're set up for the playoffs and regular season. So, and they have Brendan Moore, who's a hell of a coach.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think that when I look through, like, goalies, it's so tough. I mean, a goalie could be hot, right? Just hot at the right time.
Goaltending's weird. Like, you saw Vegas last year. They had a goalie that wasn't even to use their fifth stringer, and they won the Stanley Cup. So Samsonov is a good enough goalie to win the Stanley Cup, if you ask me, if he's playing hot at the right time. You know, it's just, if he can find it, because nobody knew who the hell Matt Murray was until he won. He had to go in for Flower, and now
Binnington,
he's
Binnington in St. Louis.
Binnington.
Yep. And when Dallas lost, who did they have? Was it
Ottinger?
Like, just random, right? Like, it's not like you're back in the day, like Marty Brodeur is going to start 70 games a year and fucking win you a playoff series. Like, you know what I mean? It doesn't really exist.
Vasilevskiy is by far the outlier. In the last decade, he's the best goalie in the world. But, I mean, other than him, it's just a bunch of, we had this guy, Darcy Kemper, and we had Braden Holtby, and, you just go through it.
Yeah, and Holtby didn't last long in Washington. I think the next year they shipped him off to Vancouver,
Yep. They gave him a contract, and he was a disaster after that. And then he was sent off to Vancouver, sent to Dallas, bought out, and career's over. Yep.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so I don't know, like, cap space wise, I don't know what because the Leafs continue to surprise me with the moves that they're making based on the limited cap space they have. I don't know if they have room for a move for a defenseman in the offseason. A lot of people say trade Nylander for a D-man. I don't know. My father had a great point this week. He's like, well, why don't we just buy out Tavares at the end of the year and then use that available cash to pay for Nylander and move on? And it's like, okay, mathematically, I understand, but he's your captain. He's from Toronto. He's on a no-move clause. Like, if you're just looking at numbers on a spreadsheet, okay, buy him out. But it's a human being. His life is there. He's the captain of your team. That's a huge PR thing, I don't know. What are your thoughts? Like, what do you think's going to happen with Nylander? Because he scored 40 goals last year. He's worth the money he's asking, and everyone's pissed off about it. And it's like anywhere else in the league, he'd get fucking paid $10 million to score 40 goals.
I agree. I agree. And I understand why the Leafs don't want to pay him that with their cap structure, and I realize why he wants it. I don't think either one is wrong in their sentiment. And I think Leaf fans, I give them credit because I normally don't. They have acted really rationally with this. Normally it's a contract, like the Matthews contract was completely fair. I thought they did that well. I thought he did well for himself. The organization did as good as they were going to do, and I tried to explain this to, Leafs fans in my life.
No names dropped.
Which is hard to do sometimes. So to bring logic to a knife fight. But the Nylander thing, I'd let it play out. I think he's comfortable playing out the season. I don't think the Leafs should just feel pressured to sign him. If you win and he walks, then
who cares?
It's a better team.
Yeah, who cares?
Who cares?
You won.
Right. And if you win, to Big B's point, maybe you buy out Tavares easier as well because you just won. He probably won't want to retire, but he's got a ring, and he's the pajama boy that brought a championship to Toronto. And it's a better feeling. Like, it happens every year. Like Riley Smith, quietly, this is different, but Riley Smith was OG Vegas Golden Knight. He was one of the first players they took. He was awesome that they got him from Florida for nothing. Basically nothing. Florida's like, please don't take this player. It turned out to suck. We'll give you Bill Carlson, and we'll give you this player, right? And they traded him to Pittsburgh for a fourth because they needed the cap space to sign Barbashev. Right. And I don't think it's an easy move, but they did it. And I think for Toronto, maybe Tavares will be more open to it too if he's got 1 year left. You know, things change. It's a whole year. Maybe it doesn't go well. Maybe it does. So I wouldn't feel pressured. I don't think they'll trade him throughout the season because they value him. They will try to find a defenseman another way, and I think that'll be a trade deadline deal. Or maybe there's another hockey trade on their team that I'm not seeing right now. Maybe, Domi's on a 1 year deal, Pertuzzi's on a 1 year deal. I think both players will do well, but maybe it's a Matthew Nyes. Maybe it's a Nick Robertson. It's one of their Fraser Mitten, who's a 19-year-old who looks like he's going to make the team out of training camp. Easton Cowan, who was their first-round pick last year. Sometimes to make a big move, you have to give away prospects that you don't want to lose. But that's
the problem with all that,
business.
Jug, is none of those guys have big contracts. None of those guys that you just, I mean, the first, the Domi and the Bertuzzi, but when you talk about Nyes, Robertson, Cowan, all those guys are making league min or rookie maximum, right? So
here's the loophole. Somebody gets injured.
Robot Island, baby.
in March, somebody gets injured and they're healthy somehow. April 14th, they're completely healthy.
Yeah, totally.
And everybody says Tampa's the only team that does this. Wrong. Yeah. The Maple Leafs are doing it right now with Matt Murray, who had surgery yesterday, and he's out 8 months. Wow, that's odd timing. He didn't have it during the summer. But, so maybe somebody goes down that's got a $5 million cap hit or a $4 million cap. Morgan Riley gets injured every year. Maybe he legitimately gets injured, and he's out for a while. You're like, maybe we add somebody, and there's ways around it. So I think you can cheat this. Everybody cheats the system. Toronto can cheat the system if they want to.
And they can cheat it better than a lot of teams because they can afford it. They can afford to put people on Robot Island and just say, here, I'll give you $5 million not to play for us right now. Where a lot of lower budget teams don't have that opportunity to do that, right?
Like even Vegas, Mark Stone legitimately had back surgery. As you know, with a bad back, that's a legitimate injury. And but to your point, they said, okay, we got almost $10 million to spend on a player. Some teams wouldn't do it because their owner would be like, I'm not spending more money. We might not win. They said, we'll go get Barbashev for a third rounder, and we'll add that money and we can keep it under the cap. And they had to pay Robin Leonard to not play, and they were doing a bunch of different stuff. But when you're trying to win, you don't care. And ultimately it worked out for Vegas.
Vegas has balls because they had Fleury, who won a Vezina, and I love Fleury, and all of Canada loves Fleury, like generally speaking, and not every single individual, but as a whole, Canada loves Fleury, and he went from winning the Vezina to walking for nothing with Vegas. Vegas has balls, man.
Literally not.
They're not afraid to shake it up.
Yeah, they're good again. Yep. They're going to be good again. I think out west they're good. L.A. is one of my favorites. Looking at them, Pierre-Luc Dubois. Your boy, it's no Los Angeles.
I don't like
King.
Dubois.
Your boy, Philippe Danault.
I like Danault. Love Danault. Yeah.
And Kopitar up the middle. That's a 1-2-3. That's a hard to rival that.
Danault, when he went on that run with Montreal, man, he put the team heavily on his back. I know there's a few players that really stepped up in that run, but Danault was one of them. He played fantastic.
Price, Danault, and Weber were the three key
and
cogs.
Even well, their D-core, they had 4 good D. Edmonston and who was the guy they traded to Florida?
They had Sherratt on that team.
Yeah, he was good.
They played like 28 minutes a night because their bottom two were so
terrible. Bad. Yeah. But no, Danault, I love. I mean, LA got better. They got Dubois, which is an ad, and Deneau's fantastic. Kopitar's fantastic. You know, Doughty's still got some game left in him, and I like Doughty. I'm rooting for Doughty. I know he's aging, and he's not what he was, but I'm rooting for Doughty. He plays the game with attitude, like them. Patrick Kane, where's he gonna go? Jonathan Toews, is the legacy done with these guys, or what's gonna happen with them?
I think Toews is done. I think Kane will be signed by Christmas.
You think Toews is retired? He's done playing hockey?
I think so.
And you think Kane is going to sign?
Yeah, it's weird because I think Buffalo makes a lot of sense because he's from Buffalo. I think they're going to be a lot better. Tage Thompson's a stud, and he's an American, so you could pair the two Americans together potentially. I mean, that team's fun. They're one of the funnest teams to watch in the league. But they're not a contender yet. Young, they just signed Darlene this morning to a huge extension. $11
million a year, I think.
$11 million, which is
it's rich, but he's good.
It's a lot, but
and then
he's
they got
good.
Power coming up through. We seen Power at the World Juniors. That kid was nasty at the World Junior level.
He's good in the NHL too. They're gonna have two $11 million defensemen here pretty soon. So I like them, but I think it's Kane, either the nostalgia thing, go back to Buffalo. I hear Toronto because that's always
of course.
They don't.
I don't see a fit for him in Toronto. They already have enough skilled forwards.
Sense.
Yeah.
They don't
Look
need
what
them.
New York did.
So
they signed him and Tarasenko and all these skilled guys, and they got nothing for it in the playoffs last year.
Right. I wonder if he's not looking at that. There's contenders. I would think he might take a peek at Edmonton. The city stinks. Me and you both
got stabbed. Last time we were in Edmonton together, someone pulled a knife on me.
So that city sucks, but McDavid, Draisaitl, they got a good team.
Totally.
Colorado, maybe. Here's my thinking there. By all accounts, Drouin had a great camp. He's on their first line in training camp playing with McKinnon, so your Halifax days. Then he turns into a problem, which he tends to do. And it doesn't work out for whatever reason. Drouin for Kane is a pretty easy swap. True. And Kane for $1-2 million or even league minimum with McKinnon on the Colorado team that wants to win, that makes a lot of sense.
On the power play, and totally.
He wouldn't have to be the man. He could just be a good player on that team. So that would work.
But can Kane play when he's not the man? Can he not be the go-to look on every power play? He's not used to being the secondary scorer. Can he adapt?
You're right. I don't know because a lot of these guys haven't had to. Because Crosby's still the man in Pittsburgh, and you could argue one way or the other whether that's a good thing or a bad thing because he's advanced in age and he's still a great player. Don't get me wrong, but he's not 25. Sid.
Of course.
He's not Sid the kid anymore. He's Sid the middle-aged man. So in the NHL sense, so I think if you're not getting a bigger dog than McKinnon. So I think he would just be like, you know what? I need to check myself a little bit here. Maybe if you're on the most competitive person,
totally.
Step back. Maybe that would work. Maybe Kane in Pittsburgh too. They already got the old senior, nursing home
Carlson,
team down there in Pittsburgh.
Malkin, Crosby, Letang.
His other old guys. So maybe that would work too.
I think Pittsburgh was a matter of Crosby saying, I don't want to be bad and I want to finish here. So we're going to try to win until I retire, basically. That's what I think happened there.
They're going to try to win. I think they do make the playoffs this year. They missed last year. I think they get back in. And they need to try to win the next 2-3 years because after that team is going to be awful.
They're roasted. They're done.
Awful. They got no draft picks. They got nothing. So that's going to be the new Chicago in 2-3 years. So I think it's tough to win, but the East isn't loaded. I'd rather be playing in the Eastern Conference this year than the West, quite frankly. I think the West is tricky. So a lot of teams that are similar, like Calgary, Seattle, they're kind of the same. Vancouver's a decent team. Minnesota, Winnipeg, they're kind of like they don't know where they are. Are we partying or are we staying home? They got they don't know where to go. I know where we fall, what we'd rather do, but they kind of got to figure that out. St. Louis, same kind of thing. So there's a bunch of teams that I think will figure out through the year who they are. and then make decisions. Like Winnipeg could be a big seller because they have Scheifele, who's a UFA at the end of
I
the
hope
year.
not.
Connor
I
Howard,
hope not.
UFA.
I don't like watching Winnipeg. I hope not. Cold city, terrible city. I don't want to see
brutal.
Winnipeg do well.
I don't think they're going to. I think they'll trade off the Leafs. Yeah.
I want the Leafs to do well, and I want everyone else to suck.
What about Edmonton?
No, I love McDavid, man. I love. That's why I like the MJ documentary. I like when the best players are the best players, and I want to see them fucking dominate. When I look through the records of all the awards Gretzky won in a row, Lemieux, Yager, those guys, I want McDavid to be right there, and Crosby too. He falls in that category. He's got a lot of hardware. I want to see McDavid just crush the league. I want to see him get 150 points this year. I want to see him run away with it. I want to see him with a chip on his shoulder, and I want to see him put the Edmonton Oilers on his back and dominate through the playoffs. I want to see that, and I want to see Draisaitl do it too. And I love how they operate in tandem. There doesn't seem to be a lot of competitiveness or like negative like jealousy between them. They're both just superstars, and they both just want to win, and they seem like, you know, really great people and things. So I'm rooting for Edmonton in that sense. And God knows, like, you know, I don't know what'll happen if they don't win eventually, because there's gonna be a massive disruption. I think, like, McDavid, he's a winner. He's got to win. Like, and if it ain't in Edmonton, I don't know what's gonna happen. Like, I just hope that he can bring Edmonton to success. Honestly,
it's a big year. It's a big year for that team and for Toronto, because they're in similar positions. You had a bunch of superstars that want to win and haven't accomplished jack shit so far. So kind of, the rubber meets the road at some point, and something breaks, one way or the other. I think Draisaitl, I think McDavid, they love playing with each other, and I don't think it's their fault that they're losing. But eventually, you have to, maybe I have a better chance somewhere else. And Draisaitl, year left after this year.
Those two players, plug them into any other team, they're going to have success. They're winners. Draisaitl and McDavid are winners, but they can't. It's a team sport, right?
Yep.
If this was basketball, they'd get 50 points a night and probably lead their team to a championship. Or if they were a quarterback or whatever, in different sports, maybe they could be more individual and carry the team. But in hockey, you can't. You can only McDavid can only play 20 minutes a game, 25 minutes like max. Like, there's only so much you can do. And I think that the two of them are winners. And I think that on any team they would have success. And I don't think that the losing is at all their fault. Where Toronto, on the contrary, I feel like Marner and Matthews haven't rose to the occasion. I think in the playoffs, we look at Tkachuk last year on a very mediocre Florida team. He led that team to battle, and he was scoring game winners. He was hitting guys. He was intimidating. He was competing. He was their best player, and he was their best player. Toronto's best players have not been their best players, and Edmonton, on the contrary, I feel like McDavid and Draisaitl have been their best players. They're doing their part,
Yep. Yeah, Draisaitl was leading the playoffs in goals until Game 5 of the Stanley Cup Final.
Yeah,
and he was out in the second.
Exactly.
It's crazy.
Yeah, no, so, I definitely think they do their part. And the only other team I really want to, and you touched on them here a minute ago, the only other team I really want to discuss is the Chicago Blackhawks. What do you think is going to happen? Bedard, he's looking good. He's on every fucking highlight reel going. Everybody's talking about Bedard, and there's a lot of pressure. We've seen him at the World Juniors twice. And we see that he's a pressure player. He can perform under pressure. He seems like a true professional. He seems like he's kind of bred for this. But there's a lot of eyes on him, a lot of pressure. He's on a team that isn't going to be very strong. He might have a very high role on that team. He could be top two lines all year on that team, power play things, which, he most likely will be. So what do you think? What do you think Chicago looks like? What do you think Bedard's first year looks like?
Chicago will be one of the worst teams in the league. Yep. They'll be vying for the number one pick again. But, I think the way he's played, I watched him a few times in the preseason. He looks ready. Yeah. He looks like he's, okay, I'm here, and I can make a saucer pass over two sticks, tape to tape, back of the net. I think he'll be fine. The numbers might not be great because his teammates aren't that good. Taylor Hall is still a good player. I'm glad that Chicago went and got Taylor Hall because he needs Foligno, Perry, people are like, why pay those guys $4 million? It doesn't. They need to get to the floor. Yep. That's what they're trying to do. And there's no better role model than Corey Perry, in my opinion, in the NHL, because he's done everything. We talked about superstar, and then like Patrick Kane, can he be just another guy? Corey Perry's been another guy for 5 years, and he's done it better than anybody. So
I agree with that.
I like that. I think they're going to be. I like that the NHL. I normally don't give them any credit for marketing because they normally suck at it. But they open against Pittsburgh tomorrow, opening night, which is smart because they're both 0-0. So it does not going to matter what the records are. Then they play Boston. Then they go and play Montreal on Saturday. They're in Toronto a week from today. So they're going through the East Coast. They're playing prominent markets,
big market
so you get
teams.
to see the next big star, right? I think he gets 30 goals at least in his first year. I'm going to go 70 points. I might be low on that, but I think his line mates and just the situation will keep him under. But I think at the end of the year, we'll go, that kid's a star, and he's only going to get better and better from here.
Yeah, it's funny you said those numbers because we talked about this at the barbecue yesterday, and I said, I think 70 points, 30 to 35 goals, and Calder had a good point. He said, some of those goals are going to be highlight reel shit. It's going to be pucks behind your back, pucks in your feet, toe drag around this guy, make that guy look foolish, and shelf bar down. There's going to be 5 to 10 highlight reel goals of that 30 to 35, I think. And to your point, I think he'll get maybe 65, 70 points, which as a rookie is fantastic. Even as a first overall pick, fantastic. You know, when you go through the stats of all the first overall picks, that's really good. Some people might say, I should get 100 points. But, I mean, they don't know hockey. And he's also in Chicago, which could be good and bad. He's going to play in all situations, probably not penalty kill, but he'll play first line power play, probably first line, 5-on-5. And he's going to get a ton of ice. He's going to get every opportunity. But he doesn't have, like you said, they went and got Taylor Hall, who can pass the puck and finish, you know, and he can be on the other end of a lot of those points that Bedard will get. But it's not a great team. So he's not going to get those easy second assists where he makes a breakout pass in his D zone and somebody goes end-to-end and buries it. No, like he's not going to get those easy points. And that's why I would say he'll get 70, even though his talent, I feel, already is ready for 80, 90 points and 40 goals. But because he's on Chicago, I think, like you said, maybe 70 points, 30, 35 goals. It's kind of what I'm thinking.
But yeah, I think, like in the top 50 lists in 2-3 years, he'll be in the top 10 players in the league. I'm that confident in him that he'll be there, and you'll look at McDavid and see Draisaitl and McKinnon, and then you'll see Bedard not far after. Like he'll be right there.
And Bedard, he feels like a Crosby in the sense that he's obsessed with the game. He's committed. McKinnon, he feels like a McKinnon. He's obsessed with the game. He's committed. But can Bedard polish his defensive game without compromising his offense? Because I think we've seen in junior, his defensive game didn't really matter. And even in the World Juniors, his defensive game didn't really matter. But at the next level, it's going to matter. And we've seen Crosby get better defensively. We've seen McDavid get better defensively. We've seen these greats. Like, do you feel Bedard can adapt just like those guys did without losing those offensive numbers?
Yeah, because I think he'll never be Mr. 200 foot, and he shouldn't be that player because it's not realistic. Right. You need him to score points, and anybody, like the best, like Patrice Bergeron was different because he put up 65 points a year, and he was effective, but that was just his game. It wasn't. I think Bedard's going to be, 110 point plus guy in his heyday when he gets there on a good team, but honestly, it's weird now with metrics and you look at everything and graphs and all this shit that nerds come up with. And I think if he's just steady, if he's just in a good position, not cheating, like just openly, then you're in a better spot. Because I think he'll play center. I think he is a centerman. But maybe at the end of his career he isn't. Right. Because he is small. That's one thing about him is he's small. He's never going to be the best guy at face-off just because of that size. And if you're a winger, you can cheat a hell of a lot more. Yeah. And you can get away with it. And people don't really see it. So it might be a bit of what position are you playing and what situation is you're thrust in.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, fair enough. I hope success for him. I've enjoyed watching him. I've enjoyed watching games with you, watching Bedard, and just do his thing. And we all kind of hope for the next great, especially if it's a Canadian. You're like, I hope he's the next, superstar. So I think everybody's rooting for him. I hope that he stays in line in the sense that he doesn't get distracted by all the fame and fortune he's, already kind of has and is only going to get more of as he becomes a superstar in the NHL. But I hope the best for him. I was kind of hoping Kane would go back to Chicago just to play with him, have that veteran, and you mentioned Foligno, you mentioned those guys, Perry, like they're great guys to have around them. Foligno was a captain for a long time. Perry, I don't think was ever a captain, but he played leadership roles on all of the teams he's ever played on. Even later in his career when he was just a rental, he was a leader on every team, Dallas, Tampa, Montreal, like he was, And like you said, he adapted from a Hart Trophy and 50-goal seasons to being a fourth-line guy. So I agree with Chicago, what they've done there. I like that they put Hall with them. I kind of wish they would sign Kane for the nostalgia of Kane being a Blackhawk, but also to welcome in the new generation of Blackhawk, which is, Connor Bedard. Yeah, so that's kind of my feeling on all of that.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I think it's going to be a fun season in the NHL because there's a lot of good teams. There's a lot of teams that are just kind of trying to still figure them out. I want to see them play. It all starts tomorrow. So we got to, the grind. Right. The grind begins tomorrow night with the triple header.
There you go. Well, I appreciate your time, Jug. I appreciate you helping me out here, jumping on. I love talking.
Oh, there is some breaking news here. There's some breaking news that I know you'll be interested in. There's a heavyweight fight in the UFC where Curtis Blaydes is supposed to fight Jailton Almeida. Curtis Blaydes had to pull out to fight next month. Stepping in to face Almeida is your boy, Derek the Black Beast.
No way, Derek Lewis. I was going to ask you about Derek Lewis, actually, when we were on the UFC. So he's stepping in. He was a backup.
Yeah, 5-round main event.
5 round. Can that guy last 5 rounds?
Yeah.
No, it's not gonna. He'll either put someone into the hospital in the 2nd round, or he'll be in the hospital by the 5th round, I think.
Yeah, he's fighting one of the most impressive heavyweights in recent memory. So it's gonna be a tough.
That is good breaking news. That's nice. I love Derek Lewis, knockout king. He's a character. Yeah. He does great interviews. He doesn't give a shit. He knocks guys out. He's rugged. He is what he is. I root for Lewis, man. I like him. You know that. So that's funny. Yeah, we'll have to rent that one together.
Yeah. Sao Paulo, Brazil, November 4th. The Black Beast headlining.
Yeah, sick. Doesn't get any better than that. He's
good way to wrap it up with the Black Beast.
That's right. What a stud he is. Right on. All right. Well, thank you very much for your time, and thanks for coming on. And we'll be chatting.
Well, thanks for having me.
All right, buddy.
The Sawyer Hannay Show.